Module 20, we are talking about here about the corpus sanitation and preediting. As I've already said that our discussion is now actually concentrated on TDR corpus. So the entire corpus was manually edited, typed into the machine. So there are a large amount of texts in the corpus which needs to be checked and validated through editing. In real sense, it is basically a kind of text validation part, pre-editing part, text normalization part, and standardization part. So here we are going to identify what kind of errors are observed in this text and what are the strategies we have followed to make those corrections, to make this corpus maximally useful without any error for the end users. So first, we will talk about the errors, what are the noted, different types of errors that were. We have noted there are 5 types of error inside the corpus. First is omission of character. Omission of character implies that at the time of typing, a particular letter which is supposed to be there inside the word is missing. That means at the time of editing data entry, the data entry operator has missed out that particular character. There are nearly 50% errors actually fall in this group. I can give some examples from the Bangla corpus or also some examples for the English corpus. And there is a full list here, you can see it, but let me refer to some examples. For the Bangla corpus, I have noted that in certain cases, the word hata means is a kind of spoon is typed as hat. That means last R, allograph of R that has to be tagged with the last character is missing. It is not typed. So sometimes dhoni, the sound, is typed as dhan, or baba, father, has typed as bab, or sisi is sishu, or school as isul, so ko is missing. So this we call as a omission of character, means one character or sometimes more characters were supposed to be there to make a word valid or acceptable is missing or not present there because of the laxity on the part of the data operator. The reverse one takes place, which we call as addition of characters. So in the first case, I will notice that some of the characters which are supposed to be there with the words are missing. In addition of character, exactly the opposite thing happens. Here, the data entry operator by mistake adds up many new characters to the words, although not found in the original physical texts. There are a lot of samples here that if you can find out that from Bangla examples, I can give an example. There is a word like kamal. So kamala, so what happens that law is written together. So there is no meaning for that, but it happens that the data interpreter has made the mistake and retyped the particular letter again. So here we have got palki is sometimes called as paliki, gamla is written as gamela, or gharwa is written as gharwa, or niketan is written as niketun, or something like that. So in cases of addition of characters, we find that particularly the vowel allographs, are repeated twice when it is recorded once, or even some consonants are also repeated twice, not required there. So this kind of errors are known as addition of characters. Then we can come across the third type of error, where it is called that selection of wrong characters. Again, this is a very crucial issue. Another interesting observation, or there are the data entry operator, due to non-acquaintance with the character layout in the keyboard, usually make some mistakes. What happens now? This is a keyboard layout, and since the keyboard is basically showing the Roman characters on it, So the data entry operators has to produce Bangla text with this English Roman keyboard. It's a very tough task. We need to know which Roman character actually assigned to which Bangla character or index character scripts, index characters of the index script. In that case, the basic problem is that you have to memorize the entire thing properly so that you press the actual button to get the required character. But as we are novel and new to this scheme, as we are mostly novice in this mechanism, we made mistakes. So in place of character A, we can press character B or character C or character D or the other one or the neighboring characters. That actually creates a wrong spelling of the words. In many of the times, it happens that in place of K, you press L, so you get a new character, new word, which is not valid at all. So this kind of things has taken place many a situation where noted that in cases of Bangla, chaite we got taite, in case of chagal we got chagal, or mahakal it becomes mahakak, jalbayu it becomes halbayu, or kalpaturu has become jalpaturu, or kind of like such things. There are quite a few examples of this kind in the corpus. What I want to say here that because of our less acquaintance with the keyboard layout and because of the less practice of using index script keyboard on the Roman script, this kind of mistakes are inevitable while data is being produced in digital form by simple manual edit typing. In fact, this is the highest possible range of mistakes in the corpus. So this kind of error needs to be meticulously observed and checked so that that can be removed. So what I have noted in the other cases, here the new type of error which is called repetition of character. This is another kind of error which has been observed in the corpus, but not the data entry operator is solely responsible for that. The technology also is equally responsible for creating that kind of errors in the corpus. What you have noted that you are supposed to write a kind of word, say, let's say, corte. Now, if you, while you are typing the text, if you put R several times, then you can get raw similarly 3 or 4 times inside the word. So what happens? The same character is repeated thrice or 4 times inside by the operator, so that we get a string where only one R was required, but multiple R's are present. This can also be possible because of the problem of the technology. Suppose you have pressed one key and the spring inside the key is not working properly, then the key is pressed and that continues. So you get a string like first 3 consonants, then one consonant repeated many times before it stops. In fact, in the corpus, we have come across quite a few examples of this kind, where one character is several times repeated, either by the data entry operator or by the system itself, because while you type for a long period of time, and day after day in the same manner for years, you have a lot of fatigue and may not be much careful to take care of that, how it's being produced on the screen. So at one point you have to look at the book physical text which is available at your side. Again you have to type, then look into the monitor whether it is properly, adequately represented, rightly represented on the screen. So it is a complex task, a complex process for the data entry operator. And in those cases, that kind of errors are quite common in the corpus. The 5th is transposition of corpus characters. That means here the peculiar kind of things happens. This kind of where character schedule okay, that maybe the sequential occurrence, the sequential ordering of the characters are reversed. So what was that? In a particular word, it was noted that ko should come after po or in between that. So what happens? The ko has come first, then po has come. So the sequential order has become reverse. Or sometimes the first character which has been used at the beginning, then there are some characters, the first character again repeated at the after the end. So that was not required, or the order has to be changed. So this kind of thing has very much frequent in the corpus also. So what happened? I can give an example here is that balak is changed to bakal, but in ironically both the words are very valid words. Balad has badal, or kamal has become has kalam, or jama has become maja, and kata has become taka, kopal has become khalap, matha has become as thama, pas has become as sap, and many some examples where we can show that the rearrangements of characters has created new word strings. So this is called what we call it basically a transpositions of characters at the time of time. The unique thing of this that this has created by rearrangement of the characters, which has been done unknowingly, unconsciously, actually generated two types of things. There are some errors which is noted due to rearrangement of words, but the examples which I have given here are actually the generating some real word error. That means the rearrangement of characters has generated a new word which is a valid word in the Bangla, but in the particular context it is not valid. Let me give you an example that se amar pashe chilo, he was beside me. So in the corpus it has come like this, se amar sape chilo. So pa sa has been changed into sa pa. So what happens here? Pashe chilo, he was beside me. So she amar sape chilo, it has become. So the sape and pashe, both the words are right. But point is that in that particular sentence, it is the pashe which is the valid word and not the sape. So sape is a new word which is valid, real word, but in that particular context it is not relevant. So it is known as real word error. So this transpositions of characters, so important error, has generated many words which are real words but not required at that particular point, at a particular sentence or at particular contexts. So these are known as real words. Also, there are examples where the transpositions of characters created words which are really a mistake, non-words. Say, I can give you an example. Say, suppose if it is a cocktail, C-O-C-K-T-I-L, I get a word something C-U-C-T-K-I-L, then we get cocktail. So that is kind of replacement has already taken place, but not a valid one. And another example I can show here that hospital is written as Poel law has changed places, haspalat. So haspalat is not a valid word in Bangla. So it is a real error, but not real error. So these are the major five types of mistakes actually done by the corpus developers, data interpreters. And at the time of text editing, text normalizations, we have to be very much careful to remove those errors, to correct those errors. Because until and unless they are rectified, corrected, the value, the referential value, the utility of the corpus is drastically reduced. Since we are trying to be maximally useful, so that kind of errors has to be meticulously checked, verified, and corrected, always with reference to the original physical text where from the data is collected. Then another important part of the corpus was pre-editing part. Pre-editing part means before the text is included into the corpus and before the corpus is made available to us, we had to do certain amount of pre-editing of the text. That may involve something like that. Management of the scientific and technical terms use the texts, whether only original English terms should be taken, or in the bracket we should give also the Bangla equivalent terms available or translated forms. So suppose in the text, physical text, we found out that the text is given and there is within bracket there is an English term also, but no Bangla equivalent is there. Then before the corpus is made available, we may also can give you a translated versions of the word into the text or an equivalent form which is available in the language. Then enforcement of standard grammar rules of the language and texts. So see whether the sentences are even properly formed. There are if ill-formed sentences. It may happen that many cases there are sentences which are quite not good in constructions. So semantically very blurred or complex, a lot of complexities are there, not even easily intelligible. In that case, we need to take much care in the pre-editing part, how to make those sentences simplified. Even if it is required that, rearrangement of phrases may be required in that case, we can perhaps do that. Although this may go against the principles of corpus generation, that we should not distort with the text. Enough intelligibility comes, understanding of the text comes, and if you find that this is an ill-formed sentence, doesn't carry any meaning, then it is our part at the time of pre-editing that this should be a well-formed sentence. Then enforcement of standard style rules on texts for simplicity. So the standard styles of writing things, accepted norms that are followed in writing text, we have to also see that these are properly followed. Maintaining the structural consistency of text. It may happen that we can, in a language like Bangla, where we can have two versions, that is, one is colloquial version, another is informal versions of texts, that is called sadhu or formal version, and informal chalit, a regular version of text. If we find that these two types of text are combined together, clubbed together, mixed up together, so it is better that at the time of pre-editing of the texts, you make differences between the two or make necessary corrections, that if you get it is a formal versions of the text or the informal or chalit or colloquial version. Shortening or unwieldy sentences segments in the text, that is another important part of the sentence, that in the corpus editing, that you can come across full-fledged sentences, one thing. Then you can also come across some incomplete sentences or half sentences, which you normally call as segments. So it is always necessary to identify which are sentences, which are segments. In the headlines, the topic headlines, the section headlines, the subsection headlines, these are basically segments. So while we are compiling, editing, pre-editing a corpus, we have to keep in mind that segments and sentences should be separated or marked differently. Then marking out idiomatic phrases and set expression in text, it is also necessary. It is possible, if possible, then we should also identify what are the idiomatic expressions, proverbial expressions, set expressions that are used in the text, and put a particular flag at the point of their occurrences, so that further text normalization process becomes easier. So there are a lot of issues in pre-editing of the texts. One of the important areas of pre-editing is the use of punctuation. So since this corpus is supposed to be used for processing part, we have to make sure that the punctuation marks are not part of a word but a separate entity. But in practice, in our practice in all languages, so far we know that punctuation mark is actually tagged with the word, that it comes immediately with the word without space. If you look at the question mark, interrogative mark, comma, semicolon or hyphen, you'll invariably see that all those punctuation marks are actually put immediately after the last character of the word without any space in between. So normally, whenever we are identifying a word string, punctuation is considered one of the members, one of the characters of the word string. But in reality, they should be treated as separate entities. So, for computation purpose, for processing purposes, it is mandatory that all punctuation marks should be isolated from the words or word strings. So this would be an independent linguistic entity, in linguistic a functional identity into the text. So it is very important at the time of pre-editing the text, make it a process, a regulated, simple order rule that all punctuation marks should be separated from the body of the text or the body of the words. This should be treated as separate identities, separate linguistic identities or entities rather than being a part of a word. So that has to be taken. There are many iconic numbers in symbols, these plus, minus mathematical symbols, and though dollar symbols, and many other therefore symbols. A lot of symbols are also used in the texts. So they are also like punctuation marks, that separate linguistic identities, separate linguistic entities. So they need to be identified separately and removed or isolated from the words also. Then there is a question of tokenization. That's the important part in pre-editing of the corpus. We have noted that many cases, particularly in Old Bengali text, we have noted the entire string, entire sentence is treated as a single word unit. That is, all the words are written together without any space in between, and the whole sentence stands for a single word. In earlier text, we have also noted, in earlier Bangla text, particularly in the poetic text, the entire line is written as a single word without any space in between. So for us, it is a very difficult task for them. For us, it is a difficult thing that because this string is actually made of several words. So this is the important part for us. We have to break that whole string into sensible units which stands for separate words. So you can have given here example that did illustrate some of the problems of effective post tagging. The entire, all the words are clubbed together. So it stands a long string without any space in between, but space at the beginning and the end. But this actually, for computer processing part, it stands for single word string. But for us, it is made of several words. So at the time of pre-editing, this part has to be taken into consideration, known as tokenization. All the words need to be broken, isolated, separated, so that computer can identify or recognize them as separate words. Also, I can give you some examples. In some cases, we have noted Ram, Sita, where we have actually there are three words, Ram, and O means and Sita. So three different words. But what happens? What is written that the O is tagged with the first word, so Ramo and Sita. So actually there are three words, but it has come clubbed together as two words. So at the time of pre-editing, we have to isolate O from Ram to make separate words. In Bangla, there is a very crucial problem. The negative particle markers, na, ni, usually are tagged with the words. But the normal practice is that when it is ni, it actually always merged with the bhag. The na is generally come separately. But sometimes some people also put them together. But to make a kind of inconsistency in presentations of text in corpus, the negative particle markers need to be isolated or separated. So there are some kinds of things, identify the words as a separate token in the corpus, an important part, and that has to be done. So in cases also, but that has to be, one has to keep in mind that this is not that all words which are combined as compounds or words which are combined together by way of euphonic combinations are sandhi should also be broken like that. No, we didn't do that. So if there is a word like jathecha, this is basically a word made by euphonic combinations of sound, we don't break that. Rather, we put it as a single word unit. So this is a part of the text pre-editing or text tokenization. Then there are also a lot of normalizations part where reversely we have noted that the suffix part, most of the time, the inflection part of a noun is separated, or the conjugational part of a verb is also separated from the root. In those cases also one has to be very careful to combine them together as a single word unit. I am giving one example here that সে কাজটা করেছিল। So করে and ছিল are the two words are actually should be combined together. করেছিল. So here there is a space between kore and chilo, but that has to be combined together, coupled together, so that we can get a single word. This is also a part of the text normalizations where the inflection part has been isolated, that has to be combined together. The same way we have noted that many of the cases the plural markers of nouns have been isolated, separated. Say, tar kotha gulo ami mani, I follow his words. So kotha and gulo are actually kept here in the corpus as two separate words. But they are actually a single word, so they should be clubbed together. So the space which is there in between these two words are removed and kotha gulo clubbed together to make it kotha gulo as a single word. So this kind of normalizations has been very much necessary to make the corpus available or useful to the target users. So there is a huge list I have given here. If you refer to this list, table 1, you can find out that many of the words which are written with space should be clubbed together and the space in between them should be removed. In the reverse way, many words where there is no space, they need to be given space. So one part is the part of the text tokenization, in another part is the text normalization. So these things have to be taken care of very carefully before the corpus is made available to us in a normal error-free version. The other issue here is basically hyphenation. As you know that hyphen is a very complex punctuation mark in the language, and there is least inconsistency in use of the hyphen marks. We make always mistakes in use it. We have noted that hyphen is used in those places where it was not required at all. Between, say, noun and a suffix mark, there has been a hyphen. That was not required at all. It can be clubbed together. Again, we have noted that just the reverse one. When it was required, it is not at all used. Suppose there is a noun of two proper names and we need a hyphen and there is no hyphen in between. I'm going to give you an example. In Bangla we have noted that this is written by Javed Akhtar, Selim Javed. So there is a space root breaker by after Selim, there is hyphen, then Javed. But what happens? There no hyphen is given between them, so they combine together as Selim Javed. But point is that use of hyphen mark in text is highly inconsistent, highly irregular. So while trying to normalize the text, editing the text, one has to be very much careful how to use the hyphen. And in most cases, we have found that same words is written in 3 different ways: with hyphen, without hyphen, and sometimes there is space immediately before the hyphen, immediately after the hyphen between the two words. So inconsistency in use of hyphen is that to make a text useful, maximally useful in cases of processing, it becomes a real point of challenge how to regularize, systematize, schematize the use of hyphens. So in our study, we have noted that in the corpus there are nearly 30 different types of use of hyphens in the text itself. And it is a real challenge for all of us to find out a pattern and define this pattern and to find out the rules how hyphens will be used in the text.